Nerd Reactor, roll out.
So Nickel Boys, just this whole, it's a very dark history, and you being in it, the filmmaking process, still like fun and engaging, right? So how do you like balance that out as an actor and just making sure like, oh, this is tough subject matter, but also this is like something like a filmmaking process that like I really enjoy this.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that all the scenes that we did were all wonders. They're all one takes, which really allowed like Brandon and I to kind of really get immersed and lost in those scenes, so that it didn't feel like we were talking to a camera, that we had like a camera rig on our chest. Like we were able to really dive into it and kind of let all of that fade away, and which service the kind of the dark subject matter that we're exploring, because we're able to be honest despite how cool it all is. And then they call cut, and we're like, whoa, yeah, this is pretty cool. At least in the moments like where we had we were wearing like the rigs or something like that.
So okay, what is it like now? You're here together, but the process of just feeling like the immersion of the actors being there, because it just feels like, wow, I'm there with them. I feel it, everything.
Wait, in terms of the film process?
The film process, but then also watching it too.
Something cool to say, which was that Ethan Herisse had said something super interesting about the idea that there's no like traditional scene partner while they're shooting the film, right? Like Brandon, if Brandon is Turner, he's behind the camera with Jomo or Sam or something, and Ethan's in front. And for the first time, the scene partner now, which is the audience, is giving their feedback to us as we premiere the film. And so essentially the film is complete by showing it to the crowd, and these guys finally get the reaction of the other characters, which are you.
And the question, like let's say when you're acting on a spot, like do you feel like this clicks for me, or when you really feel like the reaction from the people watching is like, this is what this film's about?
Both. I think because we got to shoot it in all oneers, me and Ethan have talked about how that makes it so like we very much get to live in these scenes. Like some of these scenes are like 5 minutes long, so we get to live in that whole moment, which is rare on a film set. You kind of just like, you do 3 scenes and you cut, and you're like, or 3 lines, then you cut and get a different coverage. But we got to live in this moment. So yeah, I felt like we were in it. I've been trying to say everything that Ethan has been saying.
Because I said that.
We just quoted
earlier.
you before you got here.
Did you really?
There was a clip they showed, was like a scene of you just talking, but it just feels so authentic, and it felt like I was there. And so I want to ask you, like, when did it click for you? Like, oh, this is the type of movie that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it clicked for me because the first day I got to work, But I knew that whatever RaMell, after seeing Hale County this evening, I knew that whatever RaMell was going to do was going to be a thrill ride, and I was there for it.
And with this movie, it's like a dark history, but then also the filmmaking process, it's very just engaging and just always like, let's say, innovative process, right? So how do you like balance that out in terms of like, oh, this is like the heavy film I'm working on, but then also I really love the crew I'm with.
Yeah, well, it's American history, it's not dark history. It's American history, and it's our history, and we have to confront it. So I mean, it's a joy for me to be able to be a part of that kind of work, honestly.
Can you give me a little rundown on your character in Nickel Boys?
Yeah, I play Harper, who works at what they call the Nickel Academy. He's this kind of go-between. He's close in age to Harper and Elwood, a little bit older, and he kind of exists, at first at least, in this sort of in-between place of, is he an employee, is he their friend?
So what was that? Because your relationship, is it like a good relationship, or is it like something else?
I think this movie's very beautiful and complicated because in the most immersive, emotional way, it shows what these children were robbed of, and it tries to filmically give back some of that experience. At the same time, I think it shows so many forms of containment and so many ways that people and systems inflict cruelty and violence. And I think it's a very I don't want to spoil anything, but it's definitely about the way that they get trapped by him and other people.
Nickel Boys, very heavy subject matter. And then also with the POV shot, that just makes it feel more immersive and like you're really in it. So how do you navigate like your emotions, making sure, making sure it's like a safe place to just film that and as an actor?
I mean, it's weird at first, but after a while, it gets kind of normal. And not in a sort of like lame way, like how you stop noticing pictures on your wall after you've had them hanging for a few years. It gets normal in the way that you're doing something different and innovative. And because of the nature of the subject matter, who's been cast, all the wonderful people who are associated with the project, it feels like the right direction to move in. So, yeah.
And then also, because it's set in the 60s, right? And then, so what was it like for you just feeling like, oh, this is getting like real or getting transported back in time?
Mm-hmm. Funnily enough, I did a lot of period work when I was in college, and RaMell, he had said he was really paying attention to making sure people look like they could have been actual human beings in the 60s. And he mentioned, he was like, yeah, one of the reasons I got you is because like I buy it. Like you look like you could have been around there. And that tickled me. But it also kind of sort of, it made me a little less insecure. It made me feel like I belonged. Like it was a funny thing to mention. But then as I sat on it, I was like, oh, maybe this just means I'm supposed to be here. And that helped a great deal as well.
And then last question. For this movie with a unique point of view and learning new experiences, I bet, how will you like carry that for future projects?
What's crazy is I know that the subject matter is so dark and heavy, important, historical, but we had fun making this movie. I had fun making this movie. I met so many cool artists, performers, collaborators who I'm hoping to work with in the future. And I think I can say the proudest thing I can take away is the memories. Because none of those memories are dark or filled with trauma or rife with suffering like the story is. And I think it's crazy that because of that dark, dark time in our history, I got to have a good time. And something about that feels strange, but something else feels right. Our forefathers did what they did and fought their fights so that I could have this conversation with you today after making a movie, you know?
I play Spencer. He's the supervisor at Nickel Academy, which is essentially a prison school for boys. And he beats the shit out of a bunch of kids and worse.
How does that, like when you're reading the script, you're playing this character, how do you make sure like, all right, this is heavy and I want to try to be like, serve the story?
Yeah, I think that's it. You just try to serve the story. You just try to be basically, I mean, he's like the guy in the deli who's making the sandwich. That's just his job. He's just showing up and doing his job. And because the Florida was Florida then, because these schools were these schools then, that his job was an evil one.
And then with the POV shot, very unique. And what was that like for you, being in that, the feeling of like, oh, this is actually a cool way to do filmmaking?
I mean, it's great. Like, there's no room to be precious. You're just going to talk to the person and be in that space. And I had no idea. The thing how beautiful the images were going to end up being. I mean, because that could be like so sloppy and so not sloppy, but just like messy, or give you like car sickness or seasickness or some sort of sickness. But in fact, they're just some of the most gorgeous images that have ever been captured in film.
And with this, I don't know if you have an idea, like previous projects, like this would be cool if this movie or show that I worked on had that POV shot.
Oh, yeah. No, I hadn't thought about that. But sure, New Adventures of Old Christine shot through a POV. Wouldn't be funny.
What about Batman in that POV shot?
Oh yeah, man, that'd be good. I'm sure that'd work.
And Nickel Boys here, what are you looking forward to the most watching this?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I love films in general, and I love educating myself on different types of movies and seeing all sorts of different sides of life and learning about different experiences. And I think the best thing you can really take away from things like this is getting insight into different characters that are, from very different backgrounds than yourself. And so I'm excited for that, to get to know the characters in the movie.
And the thing that's unique about this movie is the point of view shot. And I was wondering for you, like, what would be like a cool type of movie for you? Like, this movie needs a point of view shot.
Oh my goodness. I feel like, honestly, for myself being a child actor, I feel like a point of view of a child actor would be really interesting, because a lot of movies I see, like, example Babylon, like La La Land, Damien Chazelle mentioned, but they're all very, like, adult actors in that side of the world, but I feel like child actor experience is very different, and so it'd be interesting to see, like, that point of view.
Okay, yeah, cool. And I think with that, hopefully, I don't know, a future Netflix project, series, I don't know, like, because they'll be like calling you like, hey, Callie, we're working on this project. You want to do this?
I haven't gotten that call yet. Unfortunately, I hope I do soon. But really any sort of adaptation would be interesting, specifically of like fantasy novels. I'm pretty sure, I think they're doing one, if I'm not wrong, of The Cruel Prince, which is one of my favorite series ever. It's like the Folk of the Air series, and main character's like a lead girl, and I think that'd be really cool to do.
I'm gonna guess the lead girl is gonna be like finding out this prince is cruel, and then all right, we must take this guy down.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a little bit of a, without too many spoilers, enemies of lovers story. Like, enemies to lovers, interesting kind of story. So she might not be taking him down, but she does realize that.
In other ways.
In other ways, yes, to put it lightly.
Okay. So composing this, very the subject matter, very heavy. Also, like the unique take on with the POV shot. So how did all of these things help with you and trying to like come up with music ideas, or just trying to balance things out?
Well, I think it was a really exciting project for us to work on because we knew RaMell beforehand. We had worked on a documentary film that he did. We did music for that as well, so we kind of knew his sensibility. And we knew he gave us a lot of freedom to play around and just be ourselves. We've been making music for a long time together, and he knew our sound. So he was kind of like, do your thing, I trust you. And we did that. We made a lot of songs without seeing picture much. We read the screenplay and read the book and stuff, and we knew the story, but we kind of tried to go on our own path mostly, just kind of doing what we do intuitively and building little pieces of music together. And then, yeah.
And then I think when we finally saw the picture, then it started to inform what our music sounded like, because we read in the script this POV thing, but it's hard to imagine what that's really going to feel like, And we realized that we were actually able to make far more ambient and textural music than you kind of can get away with in film music, because of the kind of way the character is embodied and the way it looks, and you could make music that's kind of emanating from their experience more than kind of scoring the scenes at large, which was like pretty unusual in my experience for film music. So yeah, we got way more experimental textures, ambient stuff, less percussion, less kind
of field recordings.
Yeah. It's great.
So kind of like feeling of you guys can take your time with this. Letting things fleshed out.
Exactly. Like the music like unfolds slowly, which like you don't often get with film music. You have to kind of say what you're gonna say and bring a theme. But where like this music's evolving as like a person experiences the moment they're experiencing. It's pretty neat.
And RaMell didn't want us to be prescriptive, and he didn't want us to make a certain thing that sounded like quote unquote film music. And so that was just exciting for us, I think, because it was different. And
yeah, I found like it almost was like he doesn't have a relationship to how films should look and sound. He's such an outsider that he's just kind of compelled by his own instincts and own aesthetics. So like we found when we made music that sounded a little more like film music and kind of did what that does, he would be like, it just wouldn't make it into the cut. It would fall away. And then when we would kind of tap into our inner world and do something that really felt us and like how we were moved by the story, it would lock into the cut. It would turn into a theme, and it would grow. And like, so he really kind of showed us the way in a beautiful way. Yeah.
Great collaboration. And I like how you asked if we intentionally tried to balance the content of the film, like subject matter. And I think we didn't on purpose, but there's something that RaMell saw or heard in our music even before working together, is that he noticed that the pairing of his imagery and our music was like interesting and did something else. And we kind of just trusted him with that. I'm not sure what that is.
It's not an obvious pairing, you know? And I think we first felt that in Hale County this evening. We co-scored his previous movie. And yeah, we were very surprised by what happens when the music and the picture spark. It's like this third new dimension, and we're still kind of very curious about that and exploring it. And we feel like it's very ripe, and we don't really know the science of it, but it feels really good.
So like, okay. Yeah, because I'm getting a sense that it's like hard to pinpoint because exploration. But after this movie, is there something where in your previous projects you're like, what if we applied it to this project, and how would that look like?
Oh yeah, that would be the dream. It's just collaborating with filmmakers that are untethered to like what movies look and sound like in 2024, and I think that's a very rare thing. But filmmakers are under a lot of pressure to deliver something that feels familiar, fits into a box of how the audience would walk away or how to categorize it. But RaMell doesn't fit into any of that, and he's not bothered by that. So like all of us surrounding him have created a world that is untethered by that. So like for me personally, and for my collaborations with Scott, I would love to access more of that inner place and bring more of ourselves into the stories and learn how to do that. It's just a beautiful journey, and like really challenging and compelling and like really fulfilling creatively, I find. Yeah,
I feel so grateful that we got brought on to this project and this story, because it's such a beautiful story yet so dark, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's really upsetting, but the way it's been rendered and told is like nothing I've seen or felt, you know.
You're one of the masterminds for bringing this look of this film to life.
But there were so many incredible masterminds at the table.
What is it like just being at that table, like, I'm going to lend in my expertise. This is why you brought me on board.
Oh my God, it was truly an utter and complete joy. Like, this project felt like every single artist who was at the table was someone who so fundamentally excited me. Like, you could feel it in production meetings when, like, whether it was Nora Mendes, our production designer, or Brittany Laura, our costume person, we're talking, like, everyone else was like nodding, like, yeah, oh, that's really interesting. Like, tell me more about that. Or if someone else switched to bringing their research and the things they were thinking about, like, it just felt like such a giving and almost like cross-pollinating space, which I think really speaks to RaMell as a leader and as a director. Really created an environment where everyone was so excited to come with their best ideas, and to also be unafraid to rethink everything, to rethink any idea, any moment. I think was just like truly so, like, you know, I think I left change as an artist over the course of this project. Like, yeah.
Can you list like an example of like the changes that's like, oh wow, like now I'm gonna do it this way from now on?
Yeah, I think a big one for me is kind of what this film, because of the point of view, really asked of you as a cinematographer or as an operator, where, you know, when Aunjanue Ellis is hugging the camera, it's me she's physically hugging. And when she's hugging me, it's not as Jomo, but she's hugging me as Elwood, and how the camera's moving. I'm needing to think on how would Elwood look at this moment, how would Elwood exist, and kind of channeling through my body. So there's a way in which it doesn't become me shooting a shot of Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor. It becomes me as Elwood hugging my grandmother. And that's different. I think that there's a way in which we all shoot the people we love in a fundamentally different way than anyone else on Earth. So I think that what this project necessitated was that me or our operator, Sam Ellison, or RaMell, like, we needed to have a vulnerability and openness on set, because it wasn't just the actor anymore. It was our scene partner, it was our grandmother, it was our friend. And I think that changes the way that you make images, and I think that that's something I'll fundamentally take with me moving forward is, you know, ideally every image I've done before imbued itself with a certain level of vulnerability, but this was a completely different level of kind of vulnerability and openness that I do want to try to keep putting into every image coming off of this project of, you know, shooting every person in front of the camera truly like they were my mother or my sister or my brother. I think different images come out when you think like that.
Silly question, right? Like, let's say you got the script, Nickel Boys, your name's Nicholas. I was like, this speaks to me.
You figured it out. That's I didn't read the script or the book. No, I hadn't really thought about that other than maybe some emails and my name getting spelled different ways sometimes. But it was there was a lot. I've said it a few times already tonight, but any one of the pieces would have been enough for me to want to work on it. The book itself, I would have been really curious about any adaptation of it. I was very curious how they were going to solve some of the things that sort of felt impossible in adapting it. Then when I read the script, I was like, okay, well, this script is, whether it's based on a novel or not, this would be a great script to make. And then when I heard it, came from RaMell, whose previous film, Hale County, and This Morning, This Evening, I love, and was being produced and co-written by Jocelyn Barnes, whose work I love, produced by Plan B. It was like everything, just any one of those would have been a reason to work on this. So it really didn't have to do with my name. It was just a, nice coincidence that.
And for the POV, right? Like, I'm pretty sure for you as an editor, seeing the concept, like, oh, this is exciting, getting to work on something completely different compared to the traditional way of shooting. And so what was that like for you? And also whether you're like, all right, I'm the man for this job.
Well, I think I do have a bit of a masochistic or some sort of side where I want to be scared by a project a bit. I want something to test me and push me. I know that, I rely on my collaborators to say, you're not quite understanding this and you need to figure, and a good filmmaker knows how to do that. And RaMell would help me understand what he was really going for, but let me try things. So it's sort of, there's a lot of failure involved in it, and that's just part of the creative collaborative process. But when you can do that freely and openly, that's the goal. But I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah, okay.
And last question. For this, knowing that it's a POV shot, is there any other previous movies where you're like, I want to see if I can see this work that I've done before in that?
Oh, sorry.
The previous project that you worked on is like, oh, this would be interesting if it was a POV.
I don't know. I mean, like when I first read the script, like I said, I'd read the novel and I thought, there's a few things in here I do not know how you will not ruin in a traditional adaptation. And the POV itself felt integral to preserving what worked so well in the book. So it's so linked to me to that story. It would be fascinating to see. Early on, RaMell and I had some conversations, not formally, but just about movies that use techniques of POV or even just that get that. It was more about the feeling of intense subjectivity, like really being in the body and mind of a character, which sometimes is from the first person, sometimes isn't. And we talked about films like Tarkovsky's Mirror or Persona or the experiments in real direct POV, and talked about what works, what doesn't, what's relevant to this one or not. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, but I think what prevents it from being kind of a gimmick in this film is how organically it comes out of the idea of Elwood and Turner's identities. And it just seems so linked to that to put it on another story where it doesn't come from that deep of a meaning, I think it might feel gimmicky in some of those instances, but it'd be fun to see, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But yeah,
I guess I would like to see Nope from Jean Jackett's point of view. That would be interesting.
I'm Kat Kramer.
I'm Karen Kramer.
And we're here for Nickel Boys for a couple different reasons. One is my father, the late, great filmmaker Stanley Kramer, his film The Defiant Ones, which is a real classic from 1958, way before my time, but is featured heavily in Nickel Boys. It was in the novel, The Nickel Boys, by
the original novel anyway.
So now it's in the film.
RaMell just stuck it in there for reasons. So there was a reason for why it was in the book and why it was on the screen. And that's not the reason why I'm giving it the award.
Yeah,
it's because of the issue that's been brought to light, which we were not aware of. And Stanley Kramer was always making us aware of things we were not aware of with all of his films. High Noon, Judgment at Nuremberg.
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. It's a mad, 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 mad world. Inherit the Wind, On the Beach, The Death of a Salesman, Cane Mutiny.
Ship of Fools.
There are 35 films and 85 Oscar nominations.
Have you seen Nickel Boys yet?
Oh, many times. That's why I'm giving it the award. We saw it very well. We saw it very early on, actually. I think before almost anybody had seen it, we saw it. And we decided on the award right then and there.
Right then and there, like you're like no other questions asked. Like this is it.
I see most everything, and so does Catherine, to make our final judgment. But when I know a film is right, I don't need to look any further. So I made that judgment the very day we saw it. They set up a special screening for us, and which is lovely, and people do that for us all the time, trying to get that award. But I knew that day that this issue must never happen again. But also the issue we didn't have any familiarity to it at all. So I wanted to make sure that people were aware of man's inhumanity to man. Got to stop. And I don't know if it's just in our DNA or what is it, but it's in a lot of films, a lot of stories. And so that's why we made that judgment that day.
I should mention
We're
the
here to
name,
support
the
it.
title of the award. It's at AFCA, the African American Film Critics Association, and it's named the Karen and Stanley Kramer Social Justice Award.
We're in about our 8th year now. So this is our 8th year of giving an award. So we will be bestowing that award to Nickel Boys
And RaMell Ross,
and
yeah.
RaMell Ross and Aunjanue Ellis, who's wonderful in the film as well, on February the 2nd, and again on the 19th of February.